Well, hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be talking about how to prepare for the portfolio section in the anesthetics interview. So a little bit of background about myself. I am a core anesthetic trainee. I recently got into anesthesia in 2022 and I've been making these videos to help out other future trainees who want to be a part of the anesthesia fraternity. I have a few videos in regards to anesthetics training. I'll be linking all of them down below in the description box and in the card above so you guys can watch those videos. And the previous video that I have done already is about the clinical part, which is 15 minutes of clinical scenario for the anesthetics interview. And obviously this is the part B of the same anesthetics interview where I'm going to be talking about the portfolio bits for the anesthetics interview. If you haven't seen those videos before, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to be doing a recap of the interview matrix that I've discussed in detail in those previous videos. You can go and watch them if you want. But as you can see on the screen right now, we've got the online interview scoring matrix, and you've got the part 1, which is a clinical interview part, which we've already discussed in a previous video. And then you've got part 2, which is a general interview, which is the portfolio part of the interview. Section has 15 minutes, and as the clinical scenario, the same examiners are going to be doing this station as well. There is going to be a lay person to keep things fair, so there are going to be 3 people when you're going to be doing your interview, and they're going to be basically scoring you separately on commitment to specialty, involvement in teaching, audit, QI and research, reflective practice, qualifications and experience. And as you can see in the third column, there's an overall part 1 and 2 where they're going to score your global rating. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about a bit more about global rating at the end of this video. The best thing about the anesthetics website is that everything is absolutely clear what they expect of you and nothing comes out of from this scoring matrix. So I'm just going to let you guys know what happens and how you're supposed to prepare for these things. This is not going to reflect my actual interview because I've signed a declaration and I cannot leak what they've asked me. But I'll tell you how I prepared for this part. There is also an interview course called the Anaesthetics interview course. I'll be linking down their website below if you want to book that. I am not affiliated with them. I don't get any money from them. But in my opinion, they were great. They gave me a lot of information. And as I said, they didn't guide me about anything that came out of this matrix. So nothing they told me was new. Nothing they told me actually was the questions that came in the interview. But that prepared me really well. And now that I think about it, the anesthetics website tells you everything they're going to ask. So if you want to go ahead and book the course, all means do, because they're amazing. They make you practice and give you a lot of confidence. But if you want to just watch this video and actually plan everything according to the interview matrix that we just discussed, that should be sufficient as well. So without any further ado, let's jump in. So let's talk about the first thing, that's the commitment to specialty. Once you're done with your 15 minutes of clinical scenario, there's no break in this interview. They will straight jump onto the next section, which is a portfolio bits. Sometimes they might let you know that we're going to talk about the general part of the interview, or they might let you know, okay, the clinical scenario bit is now over, but that's not necessary. They could just move on from the clinical scenario to your portfolio bits just like that without wasting any time. This depends on how much time you took in the 15 minutes of the clinical scenario bits. So if you've gone over time, they probably won't stop and let you breathe before they jump into the portfolio section. As you can see in the matrix that we discussed, the reflective practice is throughout your interview, and that is why I'm going to be talking about reflective practice at the end of this video along with global rating, because I think these two things are make or break of any interview and they would help you guys. And I would like to talk a bit more of detail after I've talked about the structuring of your portfolio answers for this part of the interview. So with commitment to specialty, what you need to do is show them that you love anesthetics, or you know what you want, why you want to do anesthesia, or you know what your future is going to look like. So there can be thousands of reasons for you to be wanting to join anesthesia. And for you to be able to prepare your answers well, there is an amazing book. This is the book. This is the book called The Medical Interviews. They are relevant for CT and ST registrar level interviews. And I absolutely love this book because it gives you a generic structure of how to actually prepare your answers. And the best thing about this book is that you can then have your own personal answers rather than, sounding off from a script. You should have personalized answers. So with commitment to specialty, they could ask you things like, what have you done so far for anesthesia? Or they could ask, why anesthesia? And if you don't have a structured answer beforehand, you will not be able to answer properly. And for my biggest interview tip would be to prepare your answers by writing them down. Here is my notes, and I'm basically going to share you guys how I prepared. Simply because I feel like this is a very daunting process in everyone's life. and it's a really big make or break. And if you haven't watched the clinical scenario video before or the MSRA video, I talk about how important interview is, and it's literally, if you score high enough, you will get in regardless of your MSRA score. So you really need to work really hard on this. So don't take this part really lightly, even if you think like you've got everything sorted and you know your CV inside out. It's not about your CV, it's about how you speak and how you deliver your answers. So the way to answer any commitment to specialty question would be having a proper structure, as I said, and that structure is called CAMP. The book that I just showed you guys actually has examples of how to write in a CAMP structure, and I will link that down below as well so that you guys can find and write your own personal answers. But what CAMP basically means is C stands for clinical, A stands for academic, M stands for management, and then finally P stands for personal. Now, depending on how actually you've done your things in your med school or your F1, F2 or SHO level, you can basically talk about things in a way that highlights the things you want them to talk about with you. So for example, if you want them to ask you something from your CV which you're extremely proud of, then you would answer in a CAMP structure but emphasizing on that point. Like, say for example, for me, one of my biggest achievements, I still think, was the national level conference I attended and presented my abstract in. I felt like that was an amazing thing that I've done in my life. I know it's really silly, but I personally thought it was amazing. And therefore, when I was speaking about my commitment to specialty, I linked the clinical parts. Yes, I talked about my clinical achievements, but in the academic section, I emphasized upon the fact that I went to a national level conference. And not only did I go to the conference, but I also presented, and that was an amazing experience for me. And you know, like that kind of thing. So you have to be able to tell them what you want them to ask follow-up questions on. So I highlighted a few things in my commitment to specialty. Obviously, I can't tell you those answers because you can't copy them, and if you do, then it's cheating. But I will tell you guys how basically to structure it. So in the clinical bits, you have to talk about any rotations that you think are relevant to your specialty. So for anesthesia, if you've done any allied specialty such as acute medicine or A&E or ICU, then you can talk about those. And then very brief, like don't ramble about it. As I said, your structure is CAMP. So in C, they won't stop you during this time. So you've got a good amount of time to basically say everything you can in a proper way. Just don't vomit stuff out, but don't blubber as well. Like, be fluent, be eloquent, be happy and cheerful, and don't laugh. But you know what I mean. Like, be confident in what you're going to say to them. So you're going to talk about your rotations first in the clinical. Then you're going to talk about any courses that you've attended, be it small, large, national level, or even regional, or even if it's a trust course that you attended. Next, talk about any simulation stuff that you attended. Anesthesia loves simulation. So if you have done any simulation courses, or if you have been to a simulation, which all medical students and F1s and F2s do, I know for a fact because I've taught the simulation sessions for F1 and F2s and medical students. So you could talk about those. And these would be the 3 things that you would basically cover in your clinical part of the CAMP structure. Next up, you've got academic. So you can talk about any extra degrees do you have, or you're aspiring to have, or you're enrolled in some of them. Then you can talk about your quality improvement projects. If you've had several, just list them out. No need to detail anything, just list them out right now and emphasize on the ones you want them to follow up. Like, I went to say something like that just so that they can pick up that one more instead of just listing stuff out as points. Any presentations or publications that you did, these would come in the academic parts. Then in management, you don't really need to talk about management if you've already said things like, I led this QIP project, the topic was this, or I led this teaching program and the topic was this. So you don't need to really talk about management in such detail. You don't even have to lift it out. You can actually skip that and move on to personal, which is one of the most important things and it'll set you apart. So the reason that I want to do anesthesia is very personal, and therefore I won't be able to share it with you guys on social media. But that is the strongest contender in my answer in the CAMP structure. So if you can find some personal link, or if you have a genuine interest in anesthesia, with, say for example, with aspects of education or the procedures that they do, to have like a proper, very important and very detailed personal answer as to why you want to anesthesia. You cannot just say that I like sitting around, or I like some random thing about anesthesia. You have to link it in a way that it shows that you are a different candidate. It shows that what you're talking about is serious, and then anesthesia is your passion. Obviously, when I talk about it, when I talk about anesthesia, my passion naturally shows, because I love anesthesia. Honestly, I do. And everything changed for me when I was doing my house job in my country, and that is why I wanted anesthetics. But not everybody's going to have that level of personal reasons. So you could link your clinical, your academic, and your managerial work with your personal answer and say something like, I like anesthesia because of the fact that it is a good combination of medicine, physiology, pharmacology, resuscitative medicine, acute patients you see, like those kind of things which you feel like are very, very anesthesia based. And in my opinion, they are, because it's the best specialty ever. But as I said, whatever you think is personal to you and why you like anesthesia is something that you should be putting up in this answer. The more you talk about it in a passionate manner, the more they're gonna know that this person is genuinely interested in anesthesia. It is a difficult field. I will not say that it's an easy field to be a part of. The exams are one of the toughest exams in the entire world. Yeah, it's a difficult field to be in. It's not easy. It is not sitting around and just making patients go to sleep, which is the general consensus about anesthesia. You are basically the reason the patient's gonna live through the surgery. If you do something wrong, the patient dies. A surgeon might be cutting an artery, but you're the one managing the bleeding. So don't think about it as an easy field. It's not. So yeah, make sure that you impart this part in your interview, that you know what the field holds and that it's not easy and you're extremely passionate about it. As I said, something goes wrong, you are responsible. Something goes wrong, the most smartest person in the room is you, and everybody looks at you. I've seen it in real life, in surgical scenarios, in resus scenarios, in cardiac arrests. When the anesthetist walks in or the ICU doctor walks in, that's it. You're the person. You're it. So make sure that you know what you're getting into. And when you think about anesthesia in this way, you'll be able to answer things in a more passionate, more composed way, rather than just talking about, oh, I like to sit around and do my list, because that's not anesthetics. Yes, some people might be having it that easy after they've become consultants and been consultants for years and years. But as a junior doctor who's going to train for 8 years, that's not going to be your life. So make sure that you know what you're getting into, and when you structure your camp, make sure that you know what you're talking about. And as I said, the way you structure camp is quite easy, quite simple. You can look at the book or just watch this video, pause it, and note down stuff that I've talked about in the camp structure. But that's generally the opening statement of your interview. And the opening statement is the most important bit, because after this, you've set the scene for your portfolio. You've set the scene for the examiners to know exactly what kind of human being you are. And they're looking for a human being. They're not looking for a robot. They're not looking for a doctor. They're looking for a human being, because they're basically looking at a potential candidate who's going to be working with them in the future, who's going to become a consultant and work with them as a colleague. So make sure that you impart this camp structure in a good way, in an eloquent way, but not a robotic way. Don't list things out. Be passionate, be smiling, those kind of things. And definitely emphasize how much you love anesthetics. Okay, so once you've answered all of this stuff, they're going to be asking you about QI projects, which you've talked about in your camp structure, and then you can pick one of them and talk about it, or they might pick one of yours and talk about it. I had 3 in my interview and they picked 2 of them. The first one they picked was because I won a prize, so I wanted to know about that a little bit, and why I did it and how I won the prize and so on and so forth. And the second one they asked was because it was a teaching project, and I presented in a national conference, so they were interested about that one, and they wanted to know why I did the project, what was the rationale behind it, and what was my thought process. So all of these questions, you should be having some form of reflective practice along these lines as well. So don't just list things out as a robot, but talk about your personal feelings when you went along. So that's going to give you a better chance of showing them that you're really nice and happy and chirpy and a good candidate to have as an anesthetic training. Next up, they're going to straight up ask you about qualifications. So they could just easily ask you, what have you done so far? This question can be the first question they ask you. This question can be the last question they ask you. It completely depends on who the examiners are, but this is a question that will come. So you should have a structure about what you've done so far. So as I said, in the campus structure, you've already talked about the courses and all of those things you've already talked about, and you'd be like, oh my god, I'm going to talk about all of that again. Essentially, the answer is no. They're just asking whether you've done any postgraduate qualifications, whether you've done any proper courses, and if you haven't covered that already, they'll ask you details about these things. If you've already covered it, they won't ask you this question again, but they would ask about your experience. In the experience part, they can ask you things like, what do you do in your free time, or how do you deal with stress. Stress, as I said, is a major thing that a lot of people ask, not just in anesthesia, but all other interviews as well. So you need to have sort of like, again, a structured answer to be able to show them that you are stressed, you can get stressed, you're a normal human being, but you've got great coping mechanisms, and that you won't quit anesthesia as a training program, because, as I said, anesthesia is a very high stress field. So it's going to be a really difficult roller coaster. So they want to see whether you'll be able to take charge and kind of compose yourself in such scenarios. So I usually talk about my interests outside medicine, like things you do in your spare time which you think are interesting enough to talk about, and they help you de-stress. A few other questions that I would say you should prepare for in your interview is like, what qualities do you have? I only prepared for this question is because, as I said, there's a qualifications and experience slot, and then there's reflective practice, which I'm going to get onto the next part. All of these things, they're basically part of your experience as a human being. So they could just ask you a generic question about the qualities you think you have and are going to be important for being an anesthetist. And if you answer it in a good structured manner, you'll be showing them reflective practice, you will be showing them team working, you'll be showing them extra qualifications that you have in a structured manner, so you won't miss things. So I basically wrote down qualities that I think that I have would basically help me in becoming an anesthetist. And I listed it out as a camp structure. So clinical jobs that I did, which gave me the experience of so and so. Then academic, say for example, you're doing a postgraduate degree or you've done courses and stuff, so you can talk about that and what they gave you in experience and what you learned out of them. Then in management, again, the QRP is leading projects, presentations, publications, anything you did, and you learned anything through that. So you're talking about what you learned out of it, what was your experience out of it, those things. And then finally, a personal experience. They could just ask you, like, has anything horrible happened to you? And then you can talk about that. And obviously, again, have an answer. Write this down. It's not necessary that this might come in your interview, but through that book, I realized that a lot of things can come. And because the qualifications and experience heading is such a broad term, I decided to prepare for everything. So if you are just watching this video, I would highly recommend to prepare an answer where you talk about something which was either extremely amazing or extremely horrible, and then have reflective points for both of those experiences. Because if they ask you anything, like say something very proud, you're very proud of, and you start blubbering about it because you've never actually talked about yourself in such a good way. Like most of us are humble, or actually fake to be humble, and it's hard for us to start, beating our own horns. So make sure that you have a good structure for that really amazing experience along with reflective practice. And then for the horrible thing that you've had or had to go through and learn things through it, make a proper answer for this as well. Write it down, have a proper structure, because if they do ask you, okay, has something similar happened to you, or what was the most stressful situation you've ever had in your life, then you'll have a proper structured answer, and it'll be easy for you to answer it in an exam setting, and you won't get nervous and you'll still sound eloquent. All right, so let's talk about the reflective practice. As I already said, throughout this interview, the guideline I've given you, you are already reflecting. So every single answer at the end of the day, you are going to add a nugget of personal experience to every single answer you are going to tell them. So make sure you do that, because reflective practice has actually 10 points for the entire interview. So if you are unable to show it in the clinical scenario bit, you can still show it in the portfolio bit, and then you can get 10 out of 10 points. It's an easy thing to miss because not a lot of us are comfortable in talking about our feelings, especially online, to random people you've never met. And then especially if there were hard situations and you had to go through difficult times in your life, or you had to have a difficult patient you dealt with, or maybe you had a date against you, or you had a complaint against you, or you made a mistake. No one wants to talk about those things. And say for example, in the experience bit, they actually ask you, have you had a complaint against you? How did you deal with it? So you have to have an answer. So make sure that you reflect around every single answer that you prepare. And if you keep adding personal nuggets at the end of every single answer, it is highly likely that they might not even ask you any personal experience question, because you've showed that you're a really amazing reflective practicing doctor. But if you haven't, they can also ask you directly in experience. So make sure that you're doing this, because it's got 10 points. The next thing that's got 10 points is global rating. There's a section where it states that you need to have good clinical skills and good English speaking skills. Practice and make sure that you are clear in what you're saying. It's not accent based, it's clear communication. The structure should be good, your grammar should be accurate. These are the things that they would be looking for, and they will be judging you for it. Similarly, in global rating, they'll be judging you on how are you sitting, what are you wearing. So obviously for today, I dressed up because I wanted to show you guys an example of how you should be actually prepared for the interview. So yeah, wear a blazer, wear something which is official looking. You should show them that you're extremely keen to get into this training program. So you should be well dressed. If you feel like you need to wear a blazer or a suit pant with a tie, do that. Nothing is over the board, nothing is too much. Because at the end of the day, it shows your enthusiasm. And I wouldn't say, oh, you can just sit in a normal chair with a normal background and sit in your scrubs and give the interview. Absolutely not. Global rating has 10 points. Therefore, you should work very hard to get those 10 points. And if that means you need to have better English with good grammar, if you need to have better looking clothes with a proper looking, well lit setup, then you should be doing that. And then lastly, I said, try to smile a little bit. This is something that I was told when I was practicing with my friends. This is another tip: practice until your day of interview comes. And practice online, because you never know where we're looking at when we're doing an interview online. So make sure you practice that. But yeah, try to smile a little bit. Don't be laughing, but be smiling, be cheerful, be enthusiastic, be a bit, like a bubbly, happy person. Have a neutral background. So I'm glad that I have a white background, but I have this plant here. I've got the painting that I've done up there. So I tried to make myself in a very neutral environment where only I stood out. It was a very well lit environment. So do that, because all of these things show that you're actually keen. You're a hardworking individual who made sure that you gave respect to those individuals who are taking your interview. And you gave respect to your hard work as well. So you would like to stand out in a way that they give you 10 out of 10 global rating points. So yeah, this is the end of the video. I hope that you guys like this video. Do give the video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. And I will be putting a detailed video about how to prepare for interviews online. Do give the video a huge thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!